They didn't ask, they just decided, and like always, I was expected to nod smiling, make it all work. My name is Rachel Connors. I'm 28 years old, a senior accountant at a firm no one outside of finance has heard of, and I live a quiet life in a quiet building. With no drama, no damage, I've built everything I hate from the ground up: my degree, my job, me credit score, even my kitchen table. No handouts, no shortcuts. But if you ask my family, they'd probably say I'm the cold one, not because I've ever yelled or walked out or done anything cruel, just because I stopped cleaning up their messes, you see. I have an older sister, Erin, 2 years ahead of me, but somehow always 5 steps behind. Erin has a way of making failure look like tragedy, and making everyone else responsible. For it lost another job, the boss was toxic, out of another apartment, roommates were jealous, another missed bill. She's trying her best, and my friends Carol and Frank, they never question it, they just pivot, rearrange, and if they can't fix it directly, they turn to me. You're stable, Rachel. You're lucky you can help. That was the phrase that had followed me for years. Help with Becker payment, help with rent, help with bail, always help. And when I said no, there were 8 times I pushed back. They'd act like I was the one burning bridges. I learned dearly on my value wasn't in being loved, it was in being useful. But usefulness has limits, and they were about to find mine. Sunday dinner had a rhythm in our house: same casserole, same table, same undercurrent of pressure, disguised as politeness. That evening something felt rehearsed. Mom greeted me at the door with a smile too wide to be sincere. You look so thin, sweetheart. Are you eating now? Dad didn't say much, just a note and a distracted, "Hey, kiddo." Erin was already at the table, scrolling her phone, avoiding my eyes like a teenager. Called into the principal's office. I knew the signs. When my mother acted sweet and my father went silent, it meant they were about to tell me something they knew I wouldn't. Like we made it through the salad. Mom complimented the weather like it was an achievement. Dad kept refilling his glass, and Erin kept picking at her foot like it might bite back. Then Mom set down her fork, folded her hands on the table, and gave me that practice Edsmol she saved for requests wrapped in guilt. "Rachel," she began too softly, "we've been talking. Erin's had a rough time lately, and well, she's going to be moving in with you for a little while, just like that. No question, no discussion." She said it like she was offering me cookies, like of course I'd say yes. I felt the room pause, like they were waiting for me, Taurusist waiting for the pushback they could call selfish. I looked at Erin. She glanced up quickly, then away. My dad cleared his throat, already bracing forth argument. Instead I smiled. "Of course," I said lightly. "If it helps Erin get back on her feet, I don't see why not." The silence that followed was sharp. My mother blinked, caught off guard. Me dad exhaled like he dodged a bullet, and leaned back in her chair, smug creeping across her face. Like moss. None of them noticed how still I went after that, how quiet they thought I'd cave. But what they didn't know, what none of them had thought to ask, was that I hadn't lived in that apartment in weeks, and I had no intention of letting Erin or any of them move into a place that no longer existed. I didn't wake up one day and decide to lie to my family. It took years of quiet disappointments, of guilt, favors, and memory hold sacrifices off, realizing that in my family survival come with strings, and being the strong gone just meant being the most convenient use. When I was 21, Erin's car got repossessed. She called sobbing, said she couldn't get to her new job, said the Sony was different. She just needed a little help getting started. My credit was clean. Co-signing felt like a small thing. She stopped showing up to that job 3 weeks later, missed the payments. Guess whose credit took the hit at 2-3? Mom called me crying because the mortgage was past due. Dad had been laid off. Erin had moved back, and I wired $2.00 the next morning. No one thanked at Christmas. Mom handed me a mug that said, "World's Best Daughter." And he almost laughed at 25. Aaron, that idea first one. We knew about at least Dad asked me to keep it quiet. Said it would destroy the family's reputation. I paid for the lawyer. Aaron never said a word. A year later when she got pulled over again, and I refused to help. Mom called me cold. You've never understood what it means to worry for someone you love, she said. Aaron's life is harder than yours. That was the moment I knew, not suspected, knew they didn't see me. They saw a function, a faucet they could turn in. When something broke, a wallet, Dad smiled. I started pulling back. Paula Declan, changing topics, saying, I'll think about it instead of yes. They noticed and they didn't like it. One night, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, the condo I'd bought without help, decorated on clearance sales, paid for month by month with numbers and spreadsheets, and quiet diligence. I stared at the front door and realized I didn't feel safe in it anymore, because it wasn't mine. When they wanted something, it was always ours. Just like me, time, my money, my patience. So I made a decision. I called a realtor, sold it quietly, legally, without fanfare. I moved into a small rental on the other side of town. No one asked where, and I didn't offer it. I could have told them, but I didn't, not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, out of reservation, because sometimes when you grow up in a family that only remembers sire usefulness, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is disappear just now to breathe. The texts started on Monday. We'll bring Aaron's mattress Saturday morning. Frank's loading the boxes Friday night. She's excited to finally have her own space. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They were speaking to a version of me that no longer existed. Each message assumed I would open the door, rearrange my life, absorb the weight without making a sound. They'd done it before. They just didn't know I had stopped listening. By Thursday, Mom was texting me daily. Let me know if you need anything clean before she moves in. Aaron says she won't be a burden. She's bringing her own dishes. That one made me laugh quietly to myself over coffee. She hadn't washed a dish in her own apartment in years, but I let it all play out. I didn't push back. I didn't correct them. I waited. Saturday morning, I left early, coffee first, then I drove across town to nowhere in particular. I walked through a farmer's market. I didn't plan to buy anything from, stood in the sun longer than necessary. My phone vibrated in my pocket 3 times before I looked. Missed calls, voicemails. I left. Fourth call go through. Rachel. It was Mom, but not her soft voice, the brittle one, the one layered with panic. What's going on? She demanded. There's someone here, some man. He says he lives in Thekando. Says you don't live here anymore. Ill at the silent stretch. I wanted her to feel at the unfamiliar space. The missing certainty. You didn't tell us. She snapped. You never said a word. No, I replied evenly. I didn't. There was scrambling in the background, the rustle of bags. Dad voice sharpened low. Aaron saying something. I couldn't hear. Rachel. Mom hissed. What is this? I sold the condo. I said simply weeks ago. You what? I moved out quietly. I didn't think it mattered. No one asked where I lived, so I didn't say for a moment nothing. I imagined them standing on that porch, bags on the ground, arms crossed, realizing they'd planned an invasion and showed up at Thurong Castle. Then Dad's voice cutting through. You lied to us. You said she could move in. I said, if it helps Aaron, I don't see why not. I didn't say where. Another pause, a sharp inhale from him and from Aaron finally. So what? We're just what's supposed to figure it out. No, she sounded young when she said it. Notengry just lost in for the briefest second. I almost answered, but I didn't. Because here's what they didn't know. I hadn't changed the locks out of anger. I hadn't sold the condo to make a point. I did it because I was tired of living in a space that never felt mine. I did it because I deserved to walk into my own home and not brace for impact. And Becca's sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people who refuse to change is to stop making space for them. They thought that was the end of it. They were wrong because by evening they were standing at my door. I knew they'd come even as I sipped my coffee that morning, Gavin. As I let their voicemails pile up, I knew Mom wouldn't let it go. She'd dig Oracle someone or show up just to prove a point that no matter how far I moved, I was still reachable, still obligated. This sunset. The knock came, 3 quick-lipped hits, the kind you hear when Simeon's trying to stay polite, but isperly holding it together. I looked through their peephole. Carol, Frank, Aaron, and a trunk full of boxes parked on the curb, like it was moving day. I opened the door. Halfway you found me, I said flatly. Mom looked flushed, her lipstick faded, and hair pushed back like to run her hands through it. Too many times we tried calling, she said, voice tight. We didn't think you'd be here. It's my apartment, I said. But you said Dad's. Voice was rising. Now you said she could move in. Now we're standing here with all her things, and you're acting like we're strangers. I didn't move. I didn't raise me. Voice, I never said she could move in here. I said, if it helps Aaron, I don't see why not. That was at the old place, which, if you recall, I don't live in anymore. Aaron stepped forward, then her arms crossed. Her cheeks were red, but not from embarrassment, from fury. This is pity, Rachel. You always act like you're so above everyone. But this is just cruel. I tilted my head. You packed up your life and drove across the city, toe-move into someone's apartment that you didn't even confirm still existed. That's not cruelty, that's entitlement. Aaron's voice cracked. You're my sister. Yes, I said. Cool. And you've spent years confusing that with free housing. Dad stepped between us, his voice edged with warning. Enough, Rachel. We're not leaving. We've put up with a lot from you. You owe this to your sister there. It was fewer that always hung unspoken. Always every dollar I'd paid, every hour I'd worked, every sleepless night spent solving problems I didn't cause it being written down somewhere, part of a silent contract I never signed. I stepped back, picked up my phone. What are you doing? Mom asked. Eyes narrowing, I didn't answer. Dialed 3 rings, then 911. And what's your emergency? My voice stayed calm. Yes, I have family members outside my apartment who are refusing to leave. They're not on fellies, they weren't invited. I'd like to report trespassing. Aaron's mouth fell up and Frank swore under his breath. Mom looked like I'd slapped her. Rachel, she whispered, almost pleading, you're calling police on your own family. I asked you to leave. I said you didn't. The dispatcher asked for my address. I gave it. Aaron's voice shook with rage. This is going to ruin everything. Do you know what people will think of you? Do you know what they'll say? Yes. I said they'll see. I finally stopped opening my door. Mom blinked, her voice dropped to something smaller. You used to be kind. I didn't flinch. You used to notice when I was hurting. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, packed with every ignored boundary, every swallowed word, every moment I'd said yes when even it to scream no. A patrol car pulled up. 10 minutes later, the officer stepped out, tall and calm, her hand near her belt butt. Relaxed. Evening, she said. Received a call about trespassing. I nodded. That's me. She looked at my prints, at Aaron, at the car with bag still in the trunk. Ma'am, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. This is our daughter, Frank said. This is a family matter and this is her residence. The officer replied, which you're not allowed to occupy without permission. Aaron looked like she might cry or throw something, or both. You're going to regret this. Rachel, no, I said. I've regretted almost everything up until this point. This is the first thing I'm sure of. The next day, I woke up to 12 missed calls, 5 from Mom, 2 from Dad, the rest from numbers I didn't recognize, cousins probably, or family friends. I hadn't spoken to since graduation. Then came the text, "Why would you do this to your own sister? Your mommy's devastated. Erin's sleeping in her car. Is that what you wanted?" I didn't reply. I just scrolled. Eventually, I found it, a Facebook post from my mother. Public, 3 paragraphs punctuated by heartbreak emojis, and a photo of Erin as a toddler. "We raised both our daughters to care for each other, but enough them has forgotten what that means. We're heartbroken that Rachel, so successful, so fortunate, would turn her back in our time of need. Erin didn't deserve this. None of us did." Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments from people I hadn't seen since I was 12, calling Messelfish cold, entitled. It wasn't new, just louder. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, for the first time in my life, I posted back a thread, simple, no flurry, no hashtags. Screenshot the $2,000 transfer I made to cover the mortgage. Screenshot my name on Erin's car loan, followed by the collections notice, a photo of the lawyer invoice from her due case, a timeline of every one-time favorite agreed to since I was 21, the receipt showing the sale of the condo, and finally a message I'd saved. One Erin had sent me 2 years ago, calling me a boring robot 'cause I wouldn't let her crash for a month. I ended with one line: "I didn't abandon my family, I just stopped volunteering for emotional debt." I turned off my phone after that, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need applause. I just needed quiet, and for once I had it that night. The apartment was still, no noise from the hallway, no buzzing phone, just the quiet hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of old pipes shifting in the Walsey made tea. Chamomile. It wasn't for sleepy, didn't need help sleeping anymore. It was for the ritual, a soft cup held in both hands, steam rising like forgiveness. I hadn't asked for my phone lit up once, Mum. Then again, Erin. I didn't open the massages. I didn't have to. I knew the rhythm by now. Shock, anger, guilt, pleading, always in that order. I blocked both numbers, not out of cruelty, not out of pride, but because not every door deserves to be knocked on forever. I walked out onto the balcony. It was cold, but not sharp, the kind of cold that reminded you're alive. Below, the city hummed along, people moving, headlights lowing. Someone walking, a dog in a puffy coat, too big for spring. A neighbor 2 floors down waved when she saw me. I waved back. It was simple, that small gesture, but it was more real than most of the things I'd done out of obligation. Inside, I turned off the lights one by, in the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, no picture frames on the walls, no family photos, just quiet, just cleanse pace. I didn't feel triumphant or bitter or broken. I just felt done performing, done explaining, done being the spare oxygen mask for people who never learned how to breathe on their own. Somewhere out there, they were probably rewriting the story again, casting me as Thevelane or the cold one or the grateful daughter. Let them. I didn't come here to be loved. I came here to stop pretending. I didn't vanish. They just told the story like I had and now have written it.